At its best, there is truly no sport like mixed martial arts. The simple act of fist to chin elicits a primal response in us all, whether we want to admit it or not.
Fighting's in our DNA, man. We get it and we like it.
A last-second comeback, a legacy-defining finish. Those moments are why we love it. From the Colosseums to now, fighting is everything. And thanks to the UFC, we have it readily available on our screens week in, week out. But perhaps that reason, on top of many more, is the double-edged sword, the silver bullet, and the crux of the fight fatigue epidemic.
I ain't got nothing else in life but this, and it's all I have in life is MMA, and this is what they're giving us.
I am signing off. This is the last final video.
And in order to get the most amount of guaranteed revenue that they can get, they're producing an enormous amount of content.
The monthly UFC pay-per-view used to be a magical event without fail. A star-studded lineup, hotly contested feuds, a legacy-defining main event, the winner of which often ascending to superstardom. And for a time, it was a staple formula, bolstered by the era set by the Notorious. But as the company's influence skyrocketed, a lucrative deal with ESPN would take the UFC to new heights, for better or worse.
You know, these guys came in, kicked the tires, looked under the hood, they liked what they saw, and now we're gonna go with them with everything. Pay-per-view is gonna be with them, the fights that we're doing on ESPN Plus and ESPN Linear.
A far cry from the old fighting era in which Dana White and co. struggled to put an event on for fear of financial collapse or state restrictions. The company from 2019 on to now suffers from the direct opposite, a mass bloating of lackluster fight nights and pay-per-views, all sported by an array of decaying talent. Contractually obliged, held hostage by high demands, the UFC are forced to meet their quota by any means necessary. With that comes a drop in standards, principle, and willingness to cut corners in any way, shape, or form. The catalyst for that business shift would come in the wake of the COVID pandemic.
While sports across the globe go dark, Dana White says the show will go on for UFC.
We need to fight this thing. Instead of panicking, let's find solutions. I didn't do this so I could make more money. I have plenty of money. I did this so my fighters could make money and my employees could continue to make a living and feed their families.
Fight Island was the moniker of the UFC's next big venture, a safe haven for athletes to compete and earn their keep, all the while entertaining the masses stuck inside. On the surface, and initially, clear positive for the fight game in dark times.
4 weeks after the pandemic started, my team's been in here. We've been working straight through the entire thing.
Yeah.
Traveling all around the world and doing events. Anything can be done.
That's right.
Anything can be done. Nothing can't be done. Don't ever tell me we can't do it. No.
Empty arenas contrasting the raucous thousands usually spectating, it was a novel change of pace for the company, but one that would eventually wear off. And as doors reopened, the world restarted, business resumed. The methods and mentalities necessary during dire times would instead remain the status quo. Most egregiously, the Apex Center, the UFC's very own fighting institute, complete with octagon and bleachers. Fans craved the bloodshed under bright lights, backed by the chants of thousands, not the empty soulless arena in which battle now commences. New champions were charting their legacies, and old ones ending theirs, all moments worthy of a cheering crowd. But instead, the thrill of the agony would be witnessed by, well, no one.
That'll be it for me. You know, I've had a long run. It's been great. I mean, I just fought my last fight for a heavyweight championship, and it was a pretty good fight. So
it was a great fight. It was a great fight. You've been a great champion, and you will without a doubt go down in history as one of the greatest combat sports athletes of all time.
Constant Apex events and bloated cards are the fundamental makeup of the fight fatigue epidemic, and have subsequently diminished the monthly spectacle that is the pay-per-view card. Such an occasion used to be the light at the end of the tunnel, an escape of sorts. Even if for only a few hours that would pass by in an instant, the star-studded lineups and grudge matches made them one-of-a-kind occasions every time.
There's the choke. He's got it. It's under the net.
There's the tap. Still undisputed. Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Now that magic is mostly gone by the rare exception. There are fewer storylines founded on genuine resentment, fewer superstars spearheading a main event. Now just a run-of-the-mill routine that aging fight fans force themselves through. Perhaps in many ways, it's the UFC's most influential man that has equally been the company's undoing. The rise of Conor McGregor is well documented. Long recognized as the face of the fight game, he may not have been the one to save the UFC from extinction, but he most certainly dragged it to new heights.
Shut your fucking mouth. I run New York. I run this whole shit. Now here I am, 6 weeks out, about to quadruple my net worth with one half a fight.
Conor's rise had him recognized as the new standard bearer for what a UFC fighter should represent. Not a gladiator of honor and respect, but one of showmanship and trash talking, crossing any moral boundary just for the extra dollar. It was a path not taken to the absolute extreme by any man or woman before him, and for that reason, it succeeded. Conor set lofty ambitions.
I feel him overreacting, overextending, and then being KO'd unconscious.
More importantly, backed them up. And found himself rewarded by the top brass.
I think Conor McGregor is the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. If you look at what that really means, what pound-for-pound means, and Conor doesn't give a shit. He'll fight anybody, anywhere, anytime.
A route so successful, it influenced fighting generations. Not just the millions watching around the world, but the fighters too. Those established in the company suddenly turning heel, whilst those on the come-up look to replicate every mannerism. Colby Covington arguably the most successful of which, his MAGA hat gun-toting shtick driving his career from ruins into a financial success.
I'm chaos. I'm unpredictable. No one knows what I'm going to do next, but I can tell you one thing, that, you know, you play with the bull, you're going to get the horns.
That style of shit talking is infuriating.
No one cares about you. You're boring, man. People would rather watch flies pluck than watch you fight.
The future Ian Gary is arguably the more egregious example. A man who, like so many, took up the gloves through Conor McGregor's influence, but makes no apologies in copying his route to success.
A wise Irish man once said before me, he stepped in this very cage and he said, "We're not here to take part.
We're here to take over."
And this is the takeover part 2.
I whooped his ass tonight, and he better sit there and think, fuck, I might need to change my life. People can say what they want. At the end of the day, I'm living my life, get my hand raised and doing what's doing best, and I got paid in full.
His brash confidence and fight style may be working in drawing eyes, but as fans, it's a repeated concept that has overstayed its welcome. MMA is fundamentally founded on the art of war, not words on the mic. And one of the cruxes of the fight fatigue epidemic is that the latter seems to be prioritized by Dana White and the rest of the top brass. The shine of trash talk has since worn off, as fans long for a return to the fighting principles of old. McGregor's now feeble attempts at press conferences only exemplify that notion. His efforts now met with a bipolar crowd response rather than raucous applause.
I can walk like a dog in that octagon on Saturday night. I don't give a about him, to be honest. I don't give a rat's ass about him. He's Buster Douglas is what he is. It was a fluke win, and I'm going to correct it on Saturday night.
As I've said before, time is a flat circle, and the eagerness to return to the company and sports roots cannot be personified more than in the perfectly timed rise of one man, Poatan Alex Pereira. To stave off the fight fatigue epidemic is truly a simple equation. Forgo the silly semantics of verbal warfare, favor the art of war, and reap the benefits. It's a fighting persona forged in the cage instead of out, and one that represents a light in dark times. A departure from the new norm. His stoicism once mocked, now innovative, intentionally or not. A previous pawn on Israel Adesanya's chessboard, Poatan has carved his name into fighting history, made his own fate, staved off the fight fatigue epidemic, and become the company's biggest pay-per-view star. And speaking of pay-per-view, UFC 306 is going down in Las Vegas this weekend. And you can get closer to the action with the sponsor of today's video, DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the UFC. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers can use my promo code LeoCooper and bet just $5 on any wager and get $250 in bonus bets instantly. Use your $250 in bonus bets on DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. And if sports betting is not available in your state, there's no need to worry. DraftKings is the place to be for all things daily fantasy, where you can join in on all of the fun and have the shot to win cash prizes. With daily fantasy, you can pick your sport of choice, whether that's football, mixed martial arts, or anything in between. Test your skills and let victory chase you. Again, that's promo code Leo Cooper, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. It may be up to the gladiators come fight night to put on a show and make an event a success, but every decision leading up to it is made at the hands of Dana White and co. They orchestrate everything and dictate the fighting principles of the UFC. Through their leadership is decades of polarizing decisions, the worst of which alienating fans old and new.
This is Johnson going to one championship, Ben Askren going to the UFC.
Maybe Tom deserves to fight John or deserves to fight Stipe, or maybe that's a better fight.
No.
The dark ages of the UFC, for all of their financial struggles, maintained an air of authenticity. Each gladiator in the arena was there not just for a paycheck, and those men at the top of the food chain advocated for both. As Dana White helmed the company ship, his targeted progression from underground thuggery to a professional and clean sport has been successful. With the financial success that followed came the showmanship era, as mentioned, and Dana's motivations became more driven towards each extra dollar earned rather than the well-being of the fighters contracted under him.
All right, the gate was 5.7 million. 5.67 million. 17,200,000.
Was 10,752,296. It's the highest gate for an indoor arena in the history of the continent.
Congratulations on what I assume will be the UFC's first $20 million gate. Is that true? Is it going to break 20 million?
Yeah, it's already way over 20 million.
The fallout of his poor decision-making is total disillusionment from fans and fighters alike. No longer a man who has their best interests at heart. Perhaps most recently with the Sphere card itself, an idea that at the very least in conception offered something new, something different, a breath of fresh air in a fighting era of monotony and repetition.
This is more than a business deal for me, this event. And this isn't about making money. I'm actually going to spend money on this event. This is much bigger for me than anything. I want this, I want to do it, and I want to do it right, and I want to pull off something that nobody will ever pull off ever again.
But the other side of that coin was an event bolstered by lofty ambitions and expectations, and mashed with prices equally fitting.
Very expensive tickets, by the way.
Yep.
I went on StubHub today and looked for some
What are they
tickets.
going for? The cheapest?
What are they going for?
$3K plus for the cheapest?
Are you kidding? How many seats are there?
17,000?
At $3K a pop? Not a boy.
$30 million gate.
Fees that most would consider to be absurd, even for such a one-off event, only highlighting the further widening divide between both fan and company. Perhaps in a final form of protest, most consumers would not bend the knee to those up top, and it seems the prices have lowered as a result. This fan and fighter disenfranchisement is hardly anything new. Every decision made seems to stretch that gap between the two as pay-per-view prices continue to surge, and level of fight quality goes in the opposite direction.
I ain't got nothing else in life but this, and this is this, you know what I'm saying?
One of the very first seeds for this epidemic came within the UFC's aesthetic overhaul. A partnership with Reebok provided an array of clean professional fight kits, helping transform the casual sentiment of MMA and the UFC as a blood sport into a dignified art form. On the surface, a respectable move, but with every action must come a reaction. And the fatal trade-off, of course, would not negatively affect those at the top level. Instead, the hard-grafting fighters trying to earn their keep. The raising of Fight Short sponsors meant less coin in the pockets of gladiators and more in those at the top.
Francis Ngannou came and talked about this. And he just said, I had a cryptocurrency. And the sponsorship would have paid me $1 million, but I couldn't take it. Because the UFC has crypto.com.
Recently, they signed a huge deal with crypto.com. That was a good deal for them.
The first sparks of the fiery fighter-paid discourse, it's a subject considered by most the root of all evil. At the crux of it all, we as fans are for the fighters first. It is they who make that treacherous walk, put their lives on the line for our entertainment as we sit in comfort at home watching our screens. And for that, they deserve a bounty of riches on top of a shiny belt and the cheers of thousands. But sadly, it's not the reality we live in, as despite taking on the physical and mental risks, those brave warriors are paid in measly amounts.
And I work with Uber Eats, and I try to do a 150 for a day work for Uber, because I need to work, I need to real work, because just 1 month for pay my bills, my mortgage. I don't want to lose my house,
I had to get a loan just to get a house. And I knew coming in here tonight that my whole paycheck was just going to go back to that loan.
The mere fact that you're able to continue to put these on and pay people what you owe them is perhaps evidence that you aren't paying them enough to begin.
UFC sold for $4 billion, and Dana White's made more than all the fighters in UFC history combined. That's just wrong.
Now you have $360 million plus whatever you had before that, correct?
I got a couple bucks. Yeah.
In the 2023 record-setting year of revenue within the UFC, totaling $1.3 billion, just 18% of it was paid to those we pay to see. With those figures in mind, it's little surprise that many of these men and women are forced to work another job to make ends meet. Dana has, of course, objected to such claims in the past.
We got a guy right now who's 40 years old, and he's on this hot streak, man. And his name's Jim Miller. Okay. And he's been around forever. He's been around since we bought the company, and he's still fighting. And this is a guy who's been
you know, I guess you could call him a journeyman in boxing, right?
Okay.
If you ask most people, they wouldn't know who Jim Miller is. And the guy's made millions of dollars.
But even for men like Jim Miller and Andrei Arlovsky, it's the debt of blood and body damage worth the riches earned over decades of war. I'm truly not quite sure. And for every paid veteran is a hungry young talent, scraping by on a 10-10 contract, hoping for something far greater. Financial disillusionment isn't the only driving force behind the fight fatigue epidemic. Business decisions in recent years continue to baffle fans and fighters alike. A most recent example at UFC 304, a homecoming return to Manchester, England. An opportunity to capture a new array of fans across the pond, make further inroads into the European market.
What's up, Manchester? How are you guys? It's awesome to be back here. Thanks for coming out today.
Spearheaded by two kings in Tom Aspinall and Leon Edwards, there couldn't have been a stage more optimal. And yet, Dana's mind was set. An event aired with the US viewership in mind, leaving those in actual attendance fighting to stay awake until the early hours of the morning.
Manchester was a Dana initiative. Dana said, like, we've got all these champs, we've got a surging fan base in the UK, we've had a multitude of extremely strong events in the last 3-4 years. For us to fit this in at the right time, the opportunity was to come with a middle of the night pay-per-view, which we'd done before with Bisping.
It was a baffling lack of care and consideration, not just for the dedicated thousands who paid inflated ticket costs, but the fighters gracing the cage for our entertainment. Perhaps in another timeline, another place, another way, the outcomes of these fights may well have been different. But for those fighting on home soil, Dana's decisions had clearly had an effect.
I underslept that day because my team had there was an event that night and people were fighting. So I got less sleep. I was driving home half asleep and I literally I spammed my car out and crashed it into a barrier somewhere. That was on the way home after my last sparring. I was so tired.
I felt a bit tired though. It's the longest day ever. Got up at 8 AM and I've been awake nearly 24 hours now.
And on the fighting front, the erosion of principle was clear and obvious. There are no morals, no ethics left in this game. Those favoured by white are granted a bounty of advantages and riches too, whilst the fighters who dare step out of line, or even more simply have a fight style less appealing to the masses, are forced to take the long and arduous route to the top. And even for those who make it to the summit, Dana is quick to turn them around in favour of those with that cursed mark.
I'm gonna be real. You got this attitude. You got Dana White privilege.
Thanks, Dana.
The end result of these decisions, each and every one, is that for the fans, the viewers, us as consumers, we receive a diluted product, devoid of the early principles it once held. The burnout as a spectator is clear, a process and a rite of passage we must all go through. And I can only hope that deep into the future is light at the end of the tunnel.